Wireless LAN Weekly, episode 46.
Welcome to the Wireless LAN Weekly podcast,
bringing together the valuable knowledge of WLAN industry experts, news, and the latest technology developments, tools, and best practices.
A place to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire.
Here is your host,
WLAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher,
Keith Parsons.
Welcome back. My name is Keith Parsons, and I'm the host of Wireless LAN Weekly. And this episode is kind of a special one. I'll be giving the main topic myself because the topic today is on the Wireless LAN Professionals Summit. We'll go through why we're having the summit, who is it for, how you can get involved, and why we'd like to have you come down to Austin in February and be part of a group of other like-minded wireless LAN professionals. Then in our tutorial, we'll be talking about frame type ratios and how you can use some simple metrics looking at ratios between control management data to get a feeling of the health of your wireless LAN. And the final section, we'll be talking to Jake Snyder to find out who is Jake Snyder. Well, now we're on with the show.
A word from the WLAN Geek Dictionary.
Power save mode sometimes goes by PS. Power management of a non-AP, a station, that operates in either active mode or power save mode. A station in power save mode is either awake or in a doze state. Power save mode conserves battery life while the station dozes, but it complicates frame delivery with additional queuing, frame types, and frame exchange sequences. Some vendors have called this power save pole mode or sleep mode. Wireless stations that are always powered on, such as an AC outlet, should never be configured for power save mode. It adds extra overhead, and you don't need the extra features that has.
Wireless LAN Weekly Podcast, your source of education, information, entertainment, and inspiration.
In today's episode, our main topic will be me, Keith Parsons, your host, and I'll be talking to you about the Wireless LAN Professionals Summit we have planned for February of 2014. So, let's get right into it. Wireless LAN Professionals. It's a descriptor of who you are, the kind of job you do, but it just also happens to be my company name. So sorry to be confusing and have the company name and the topic, they sound a lot alike. We've, as a company, decided to sponsor and produce a show for like-minded people who are also wireless LAN professionals as a career. We're calling it the Wireless LAN Professionals Summit. It's going to be held in Austin, Texas, February 10th through 12th, and we'd like you to come. There's a website where you can go and register. It's called WLANProsConference.com. Again, WLANProsConference.com, and you can go there and get extra information about what's going on. We've been building this for months and months now to prepare. So we have a lot of people ask questions about it, so I thought it takes the time on this podcast to share with you where it came from and why it's kind of unique in the conference world and why you'd want to be there. So let's do a little background. Every time, right after a Wireless Tech Field Day where I was a delegate, I would get feedback from others wishing that they could be there, not just for the technology, because I was also not a delegate for the first couple Wireless Tech Field Days, and I listened in and watched and saw all of the presentations, and I got lots of information from there. But there was something about the socialness of being together with other people who were of like mind. They like Wi-Fi, and you can talk to them and you feel a camaraderie there. So Stephen Foskett's model for Tech Field Day is fantastic. It does a lot for the networking community, but it also does a lot for the vendor sponsors. But because the way it's designed with vendor sponsors paying and flying people in and rooms and etc., there's a very tight limit. You have to have a small number of delegates. And so I thought at the time, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we could have something bigger? Well, as soon as you do bigger and more, you've got to change the model. And then in January of this year, when we were doing the Wi-Fi stress test process, we had 30 plus different volunteers coming in, competitors from different vendors, competitors from different resellers, people from competing higher ed locations, and they were all in the same room, all getting along. At the time, we commented it would be good to get together as a technical group and just hang out. How do we do this more often? In fact, afterwards, a lot of them came up and said, whatever testing I do in the future, they wanted to be there because it was just great to hang out and be with others who share the same passions. The next trigger in my mind as we were building this idea for a wireless LAN conference was I was asked to speak at a church IT conference. It was a conference held earlier this year with the audience of people who work full-time IT for churches, some actually fairly large churches. And I got to this group and I'm there. I'm kind of an outsider because I'm not a church IT guy, but I was talking there on wireless, of course. And it was an amazingly successful conference. It was fun, it was entertaining, it was education, and it was just a great social activity. And I could watch the people who were there who don't normally have a chance to hang out with others because they work for churches, not for IT groups. They just really enjoyed being with each other. Each individual IT person didn't get out much other than their own small team, and now they were all together. And I could see them forming into this larger community. And in a previous life, 10, 15 years ago, I used to have as a job putting on conferences for the CNEPA, the Novell Users Groups, which turned into the Network Professional Association. So I've had experience doing conferences. I put all that together and said, well, if I'm not going to do this, who is going to step up to the plate? So I thought it'd be nice. I'd sink my teeth into the project and try to give back a little bit to this community. Give back to those who work day in, day out with wireless LANs. And come up with a conference dedicated specifically to wireless networking. So we asked for ideas, we talked about possibilities, formed some little groups of people, and we fleshed out some of the ideas of where we want to go. We analyzed the costs, we looked at the finance, and we talked through with a wide variety of people in the wireless LAN community what kind of experiences that they wanted to have personally. Most of us have been to lots and lots of trade shows and conferences, and there was pieces we liked and didn't like. So we tried to come up with an idea of making this Wireless LAN Professionals Summit indicative of the things we wanted to do. Well, we also knew that when you go to conferences, you like getting stuff. The more technical the stuff, the better. Not just trinkets and tchotchkes and t-shirts that you bring home when your wife says you can't bring home any more t-shirts, we have too many. But things that you could actually use in your own home lab. Things that you could use to improve your own skills as a wireless professional. So we went out and started to negotiate with a wide variety of vendors. What we wanted to get was them to supply real, useful, professional tools, devices, and equipment to help people who are just getting started in the industry, or even those who've been very experienced and just needed to add some things to their toolbox. For the session topics, we sent out lists to hundreds of people, received back hundreds of responses, and from those gleaned and sorted them and ranked them and came out with the sessions that we wanted to hear from the people we wanted to hear them from. Additionally, we thought, why don't we put this together and use this opportunity as a community to help a charity, to give back not just to our own community, but to give back to the people in need. Previously, I've worked with a guy named Everett Bopp of Disaster Tech Labs. They're a charity, obviously a nonprofit organization that started out with Haiti post-earthquake, hurricane times, bringing Wi-Fi to them, and has also done work with a lot of disasters since then. And the idea was we were going to build the ultimate Wireless LAN Professionals Toolkit. It has full suites from Air Magnet, full suites from OmniPeak, MetaGeek, Fluke, Ekahau, everything you'd want on a MacBook Air in a Pelican case with all the tools. Yeah, great, cool thing. And I got 2 full sets donated by those companies for the charity. And then here's how it's going to work. One of those Wireless LAN Professional Toolkits is going to be given to the Disaster Tech Labs so that when they go on site, they'll have all the tools to help them do their job of bringing Wi-Fi to disaster areas better. But the second one is being raffled off to attendees of the conference. So one of you who's going to be attending the conference is going to take home the ultimate kit with all the tools that you want to have. And then we're donating cash from, actually, not only at least a minimum of $5,000 cash to Disaster Tech Labs from the conference, but any leftover profits above our hard costs are also going to Disaster Tech Labs. Finally, we had to make the finances work. Gratefully, we've had as our little teeny company, we've been in a good position where we don't need to make money off this conference. Some conferences, they're a moneymaker for their organization. It's how they supply a lot of nonprofits. Their conferences supply most of their operating capital for the year. As a company, we don't need that, so we're going to, anything that's above the hard costs of the hotel and the food and bags, etc., is going to go to Disaster Tech Labs. They need some cash to keep the operating expenses going as well. So again, to recap, the goal of the conference is to have a conference for wireless LAN professionals by wireless LAN professionals. Thus, the costs are a little higher than you'd think because we have no sponsorship from vendors, no sponsorship of meals or booths or anything like that. Of course, there's going to be people, individuals from vendors that are on at the conference because they're part of our community too. But we specifically went, in fact, I took a road tour and visited most of the vendors personally to discuss with their marketing people and say why we're not asking them for sponsor money. We don't compete with Wireless Tech Field Day. We don't compete with other conferences where they buy a booth and they get names and all that. Our goal was just to come around and have a reason to tie people together. Now, some of the vendors will be presenting sessions, like Ekahau is going to present best practices of Ekahau site survey. Well, who else could do that better than, UC himself from Ekahau? So some of them will be presenting on their own tools. But by the way, you get a copy of the tool so you can do hands-on in the session. So here's what we have so far to include in your attendee bag. The goal here is to get stuff that you want. So we have Ekahau Site Survey Professional. Now it's only a year license, but in a year you'll learn either you want it or you don't want it, and you can do a lot of work. It's not hampered in any way. You can use it for the full year. We have Wild Packets OmniPeak Professional. We have an Aruba 802.11 AC AP that you'll be receiving. You're getting a MetaGeek DBX Pro, both 2, 4, and 5 gig Spectrum Analyzer with Channelizer Pro software and with IPA, so you can learn to do packets like that. Also, Airtight is providing a C60 2x2N wireless access point, as well as books, software, NICs to do both AC and 802.11n. The goal was to put together a kit that you would want to use. So part of your cost is not only the gear you get, but also you don't have to worry about rental cars, hotels. All the hotel costs are all included. One of the reasons we did that is so that when we negotiate with the hotel, we can get an entire room block, and then everyone knows that you're going to stay at that hotel. And it's included, so you don't have to go ask for extra travel money. You don't need a rental car because it's an airport hotel and there's a free shuttle right over there to do it. So the idea is to get people who like yourself, like wireless LANs, to get together and to learn from each other. The sessions, we have 24 sessions over 12 time slots, and you go, wait, Keith, that's not going to work. I want to see all the sessions. Well, knowing that, we've contracted with Ben from Prime Image, the guys who do all of the video recording for Wireless Tech Field Days and all the Tech Field Days. They'll be recording all 24 of the sessions plus the keynotes, plus all the 10 talks. All of the sessions will be available online after the conference, so that you'll be able to see all of the ones, even the ones you couldn't attend live while you were there. Now, again, we're not going to be doing this live because we'd like to fill the seats for the people who are coming. But after the conference, they will be available on the website. And the last little question that we're going to answer here for you is, people said, why is there only 100 seats? And already between people who have helped on it and they've committed equipment or projects, etc., we've already used up, a handful of those 100 seats as well. There are no extra seats for staff or for presenters. There is 100 seats total. One, it allowed me to go to the vendors and get a very specific number of items donated. Two, we can negotiate with the hotel and know exact size of the room, exact size for the food, the beverage, etc. We have control over what's going on, and 100 is a decent number, enough that we can put them in a room and form subgroups and talk about things and split into 2 groups for the sessions and still have a decent size audience without going, 200 or 300 and taking the risk. So this time around, there's just 100 seats. It's going to be first come, first serve. The website, when it goes up live, will have a counter showing how many seats are, registrations are available. And when they're gone, they're gone. You can always listen in and come to the website and look at the videos after the sessions are over. So I hope this gave you an idea of why we put together the Wireless LAN Professionals Summit, and hopefully get you inspired to be there and put it in your, maybe it's your thing you want for Christmas. Tell your wife or your boss that going to this conference is the thing that you really need to help boost your career. You'll have education, you'll be inspired, you'll get cool stuff, and you get to hang out with other guys and gals who are just like you and they care about wireless LANs and it is their profession. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you at our conference.
Back to Basics with Keith.
In my troubleshooting and training classes, when we talk to people about how to look at their wireless LANs and what are some quick metrics we can use to see about the health of the network, one, as a review, we go over the differences between management control and data frames. And then we use those same management control and data frames and the ratios to tell us about the health of our network. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about those frame type ratios. There are 2 graphics and they're available for you if you want to follow along out on the Wireless LAN Professionals website. They're pretty simple though, and you can probably keep this in your head. 3 types of frames: control, management, and data. Management frames are very small. 100, 200 bytes would be a huge management frame, not very big at all. Control frames are tiny, 13 bytes, little teeny ones. And then data frames can be huge. We would like them to be as big as possible. The bigger the data frames are, the more efficient we are. So management are small, control are tiny, and data is huge. What about data rates? Well, management and control both go at the lowest data rate, normally 1 meg. Hopefully you'll be able to configure your enterprise network to get off of that and get those to go faster, a faster BSS min rate. But we want our data to go extremely fast. The faster the better. The faster clients can get on and off the network, the more clients we can have on the network. So from a data rate, management control goes slow, and we hopefully will have data go fast. A corollary to that is distance. How far do management and control frames go? Well, since they're going at the lowest basic data rate, that's a more robust modulation scheme and they travel very far. And yet, data frames, we want to send them as fast as possible, so they don't travel near as far. So from a distance standpoint, management and control, long distance. Data, short distance. Well, what's the job of each of these different types? Well, under management, we have the job of management frames are to get on and off the network. Association frames, beacons, etc. It's how do I keep clients on and off the network. Control frames are always around to help data frames. RTS, CTS are helping a data frame go. An ACK is a data ACK. An ACK is a control frame. It's helping a data. Different types of management frames: beacons, probes, authentication, association, deauthentication. And under control, we have RTS, CTS, data, ACK, etc. And then, of course, we have our data frames. But we have one other kind of little data frame called a null data frame. It's a data frame, meaning it's going to be ACKed, but it has no payload. And we can use that to trigger things like telling a client to wake up or go to sleep, etc. Well, now that we have a review of the types of frames, control, management, data, they're small, long, distance, etc. We can think of those. Well, now what happens if we have an idle network? Idle meaning not a lot of traffic. Well, if we look at the ratios of control, management, and data, in an idle network, we're going to have a lot of management because those beacons just happen automatically every 10th of a second, another beacon goes out. So we're going to have a lot of management frames. And if we don't have any data frames, we're also not going to have very many control frames. So in an idle network, we'll see lots of management, not very much control, not very much data. And that's okay. That's just an idle network. Well, what about in a good network? Well, in a good network, the things are running great. Management frames, they're still there. They don't go away just because we're sending a lot of data. As a ratio, they're going to go down smaller, but they're still cranking away. But when we look at the ratio between control and data, what I would like to see is a 1-to-1 ratio. Data ACK, data ACK, data ACK. 1 data, one control, and that ratio is really consistent. Now that's for counting frames. We can also look at size, and hopefully our size ratio is much, much bigger. 1500 to 13. That's like 100 to 1 ratio in size or data to control. But if frame counts, it's going to be 1 to 1. Data ACK, data ACK. Well, what if we have a bad network? A bad network meaning we have lots of retries. Well, every time we send a retry out, that means we sent data, it didn't receive an ACK, we had to send data again, like data ACK. Well, now we have 2 datas and 1 ACK, meaning we have 2 data frames and only 1 control. So in a bad network, we have more datas than controls. So that ratio is a good way for you to come back and look at the health of your network and say, how are we doing? Obviously, having an actual retry counter is a better decision, but sometimes we don't have access to those, but we do have access to the ratios. Well, what happens if we have a hidden node? Well, in a hidden node, we triggered something. Instead of data ACK, it will go RTS, CTS, data ACK. Well, RTS, CTS are control, so is the ACK. So in a hidden node, we might have a 3 to 1 ratio, 3 controls for every data. Also, a way to look at that and tell me as a telltale sign, maybe I should go figure out why that's turned on. Why do I have more controls than data? And then what about if I go into protection mode? Say I have a G network and there's a B device that's joined a G network that was misconfigured. And now in protection mode, we're going to do a CTS to self. Well, if I do a CTS to self, it'll be CTS, data, ACK. Now I have a 2 control to 1 data ratio. So depending on how our network's doing, if we're a good network, we might have a 1 to 1 ratio from control and data. If I have more datas than controls, that could be a bad network, data ACK kind of situation with high retries. If I have a hidden node, it'll go the other way around, 3 controls for every data. And in protection mode, I might have a 2 to 1 ratio. So just a quick review, we talked about control management data. They each have different jobs. They each go at a different rate, different speed, different distances. And we can look at the ratios between them to help us have a better idea of the health of our wireless network.
This is the Power Minute with today's podcast special guest.
WhoIs Jake Snyder? Jake, tell us who you are, your name, who you work for, what do you do?
I'm Jake Snyder. You can find me on Twitter at JSnyder81. I'm a wireless network engineer working for a Cisco VAR here in Boise, Idaho.
How did you get into the IT industry?
I've been in IT in some form or another since I was in high school. I did newspaper and yearbook and desktop publishing, and stuff would break and I would figure out how to fix it. So keep things moving and working, and I did odd jobs, through college. I worked as a desktop publisher, a graphic designer in a Mac shop, and had to keep new software and new computers going and network those, and that was kind of the start of me getting away from the desktop publishing and into IT.
So how'd you move from desktop support into networking?
It was just kind of I did a lot of years doing support for our environment, our computers, and I traded that all away to go work for a place at Micron Technology that would pay for my college. And by the time I got there, I was on scholarship, and they didn't actually end up paying for my college, which was good. But the IT jobs at Micron were easier than standing on your feet working in a semiconductor fab for 12 hours a night. So a buddy that I worked with in the fab talked me into applying for a help desk job and moved up into a manufacturing support job, and did a lot of software development. And before I realized it, I had finished my degree and I was in IT and didn't really want to go back and pursue a degree in electrical engineering.
Okay, so what was your first computer?
First computer was a Commodore 64. It was, I played a lot of Super Mario Brothers, a lot of Star Wars. My first PC was a Compaq 486, and I kept that until, it was time to go to college, and my parents bought me a Compaq to go to college with.
Mac or PC?
So I play on both sides. I use Windows for work. just because a lot of my tools run there. I have Macs at home or Hackintoshes at home, and I do a fair amount of work in Linux, so I can play anywhere I want to be. I tend to gravitate Mac for personal stuff and PCs for work. It's just kind of how my brain works.
So do you have a home lab, and tell us about the value of having a home lab?
Oh, yes, I have a home lab. My wife and my power bill can attest to that. My lab it's instrumental in me doing my job on a daily basis. Just being able to mock things up for a customer, or someone asks me, how do I do this? And, you don't ever want to try to figure things out in a customer environment. So, I take it to the lab and figure it out, find the gotchas, and come up with a plan to help the customers deploy that.
Would you recommend a home lab to other people getting into the industry?
I would recommend a home lab to anybody in the industry, whether, from a wireless perspective, if you can go down and buy a couple of Linksys routers that'll run, like DDWRT, or if you can afford enterprise gear, if your employer provides you some, or if there's some old gear laying around, snag it, play with it. I'm a firm believer that it makes us better engineers having more hands-on experience.
How important has social media been in your career?
So social media in my career has actually been pretty important the last few years. When I started at my current job, I was in support, and I moved up into a network engineering position, and our senior network engineer said, "Hey, go figure wireless out." He's like, we have a lot of demand for this, go figure out and kind of take this off my plate. And there wasn't a lot of people to ask questions to. I had no idea where to start. And I got on Twitter and started following some guys, reading blogs, people pointing me in the right direction, asking questions, and luckily people were nice enough to actually help me find the path and try to get, try to become a wireless LAN professional.
What's been your best and worst projects?
Ooh, best and worst projects. It seems to be that always my best projects are the projects where I'm interacting with customers that are very technically competent, very nice to work with, and my projects that I hate the most are the exact opposite. People who are unpleasant to work with tend to make the projects less desirable. So I'm pretty lucky that almost all of my customers follow in the first category, are a lot of fun to work with. I'm actually in the middle of a project right now. It's a lot of fun. Very, very technically competent staff, very nice guys, fun environment to work in. They make it easy to get in and do my job. So it's a lot of fun.
What inspires you when you get up in the morning to go to work?
I don't know. I think it's because I enjoy it so much. I don't have a lot of challenge getting up and going to work. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy those I work with, and that makes it really easy. It also makes it really easy to get lost in it. So when it's time to go home and time to check out, that I don't want to. It's a lot of it is a lot of fun. I enjoy it, and I probably put in too many hours just because I'm caught up doing what what I like.
So who's been the most influential person in your career?
So there's an engineer I work with named Robert. I won't give you his full name, but for those of you who know me, you probably know him. And he was the guy that pointed me in the direction and said, "Go figure this out." He's also been the guy that I've bounced thousands of questions off of, and pretty much is a mentor for me. So I would definitely say that he has been the thing that keeps me going from a professional standpoint day to day, and keeps me pointed in. He's one of those guys that can definitely talk me off the ledge when I get worked up, and shows me that there are alternate views to my own, and make sure that I take those into account when I'm doing designs or dealing with others. So
great. And final question here, let you think about it for a second. What advice would you give to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to pick something and go for it. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I don't necessarily think it's wireless is great. It's what I'm doing today, and it's probably what I hopefully will be doing for the rest of my life. But it was important to go find that one thing and do it. Instead of trying to go try a little bit of everything, just find something that you enjoy and do it, do it well, do it every day, and make sure that, if you're not doing something you enjoy, change what you're doing, because that at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
All right. Thanks.
Wireless LAN Weekly Podcast, your source of education, information, entertainment, and inspiration.
Another show is now in the books. We're glad that you stayed through and listened and heard a little bit about the Wireless LAN Professionals Summit coming up next year, a little bit about frame type ratios, and found out who Jake Snyder is, and maybe you can learn and follow some of his leads. We're glad you're listening. If you have any questions or feedback, go ahead and leave that at feedback@wirelesslanprofessionals.com. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Wireless LAN Weekly Podcast.
Head to WLANpros.com for this episode's show notes and the latest industry news.
Connect today, WLANpros.com.
A place to educate, inform, entertain,